Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Holmes?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Paradise?
Here.
Mr. Fernandez?
Here.
Okay. Public comments, I don't think anybody's here, so. Move on. Approval of December's meeting minutes. We have a motion.
Motion to approve December's meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And new business. Well, we're going to welcome Chief McNally. Chief, how you doing?
Hi, how's everybody tonight?
Good.
Good, good.
So we understand you got everything under control and you're going to give us your strategy.
Yeah, you gave me 8 weeks to give you a strategy that's going to take a couple months. I got that.
Well, welcome, Chief.
Thanks.
Well, Chief, I know that the police commission, the overall, one of the key strategy elements is police departments looking to request some additional headcount as we go into the next budget season, both in sworn officers as well as dispatchers. So I didn't know if you could give a little bit of background, a little bit of color around what the intent is and why.
Okay, so let's start with the dispatchers first, because that's the easy one. Currently, right now, we have what would be considered a full complement of dispatchers of 9. One of those dispatcher positions historically has been an administrative position that is still unfilled at this time. Upon my arrival at the department, discussions were ongoing about creating a dispatch supervisor position. The reason why they lost the long-term administrative dispatcher was because one of the reasons was because she moved on to something else, and that the duties of the communications division currently fall underneath support services lieutenant. And then every supervisor in the field, being a sergeant rank, also has to supervise the dispatch center. Most of the police officers, if not all of the department, are not certified dispatchers anymore since you have a dispatch system. So to have non-certified supervisors in respect to dispatching, the communication center supervising, they're not real familiar with exactly what the dispatchers do. The job is inherently different. So a discussion had been take the administrative position, change the title from administrative to supervisor. And then by changing that position to a supervisor position, they would be in charge of all of the communications division, still answer to the lieutenant in charge of support service, but take the day-to-day supervision off the 9 sergeants that we have and solidify it under one communication supervisor who answers to the support services manager. And this way their supervisor is well-versed in what they do. The other end of it would be that if you had an absence or an issue where somebody's gonna be out for a long period of time, we would be able to take that supervisory position to backfill in the event of an absence. Right now, in the past, the administrative dispatcher is still a dispatcher. So it was a duty in addition to what they were doing. So they would get called away to handle all the radio traffic. And this way with a supervisor, they could be dedicated to actually supervising. One of the big components, of course, if you're not aware, is that we have this police accountability law in Connecticut that passed 2 sessions ago, which has put a lot of different emphasis in different areas in law enforcement, and with communications being a function with people that are trained as communicators, having a supervisor from within that realm definitely is would be big assistance to keeping our supervisors in the patrol function, supervising the patrol officers. It really just makes sense. And this way, so after listening and talking to the command staff when I first came in, I said, well, I don't have a problem creating to me, the title of administrator versus supervisor is just it's a title. The administrative supervisor already gets more money, but I thought what we should do is plan to have another regular dispatcher. So we would offer a supervisory position to the 9 that we have through some process, find one person to become the supervisor to take over the communications section, and then backfill that position with just a straight supervisor. So this way it would be all within that union. That's also the fact that they're a union. I forgot to mention it. So they're a union and they would be within that union and still answer. But it would definitely streamline the communications management role with all the requirements from collect, NCIC, their training, state certifications and all that. So that's the supervisor position for dispatch. And if we
Just ask a question, a clarification.
Go ahead.
I'm George Miller. So in the end, you have 9 positions right now. 1 is vacant. You want to take the vacant one, fill it from the existing 8, and then backfill that one. So you still stay net, not 9 people.
no, we have 9 dispatchers. They're all equal right now.
Okay.
And nobody's filling the role of the administrative dispatcher because that person left before I got here. So we were just, and they waited till I got here to say, hey, we really want to have a supervisor that's a dispatcher in the communications unit entitled supervisor. We haven't filled the administrative spot because we wanted to see if we were going to be able to do this or not. And then out of those 9 that we currently have, we would post the position and see who wants it. I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 that are going to want the title with the little bit of money that goes with that. They make the administrative dispatcher makes more money than the regular dispatchers.
So prior with the administrator position, you had 10 positions.
No, we've only had 9, but we have a supervisor position. We're creating a position that would make it 10.
Chief, may I try to explain?
I thought we have 9 dispatchers now. The administrator left.
The administrator was one of 9.
Okay, but you said you have 9 dispatchers now.
Yes,
Although you didn't fill the administrator's role, you still backfill the position with the dispatcher.
There's 9 positions.
How many actual people?
You have 8 occupants, right? With
no,
1
we have
vacancy.
9.
You have
We have 1 in
9.
training. We have 1 in training and 8 currently working.
So they filled all the positions, but one of those positions historically have been designated as an administrator.
That's
So they have the positions. but
So this is a
nobody
plus
designated.
1 from head count.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to get at. Thank you.
And just for future discussion, there's 42 sworn officers and the additional 2 would go to 44. Just to get that out of the way up front.
Okay, so we'll go on to officers then.
Sure.
Okay.
Unless there's any other questions. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so thanks, Kevin, for pointing out. There is 42 officers in the police department. On paper right now, we have 1 that's just going to be starting the academy. We just hired 1 this week. We have 2 that are in the academy. We have 1 that is out on an injury after being hit by a car. And that puts everybody else. So that it brought us down to 38. So we have 38 actual working officers right now. During the process of coming on board, the police commission had made it clear that they wanted to try and increase manpower, because what we're doing right now is we have 3 patrols on the road, and then we've been hiring a 4th patrol, particularly during the holiday season, on overtime. Now, before I got here, we had 2 sergeants openings that were creating overtime on the sergeant's end. So we promoted those, we promoted 2 sergeants to fill those positions. And we had an officer that was on FTO that was about to come online on the road. And a week or 2 before he was coming online on the road, he decided he didn't want to be a police officer anymore and he quit, which is why we just hired another one to replace that officer. Now, for perspective, it takes about a year to make a police officer from start to finish. So the hiring process can take weeks or months. And then from there, they go to an academy that's about 6 months long. Actually, it's been a little bit longer because COVID is playing havoc with the academy, with people going to classes and all. And, you know, they open the academy, then the COVID comes, then they close the academy, and it drags on the training cycle. After about 6 months in the police academy, they take up to 13 weeks, maybe a little bit more in the FTO program where they have to go out in the field and they got to pass all these requirements. And at any given time, if a person doesn't pass and they don't proceed on, you've lost that individual as an employee. So knowing that it takes about a year to make a police officer, that's from start to finish, from hiring to passing everything, graduating the academy, successfully completing the field training officer program, and then getting out on the road on their own. When you start looking at your personnel, looking at potential retirement dates, the fact that there's been an attrition rate, although not a strong attrition rate, it is an attrition rate that's climbing in the state. Again, I can report back to the fact that the police accountability law has changed the way policing is being done, and many officers are leaving the field. And there's like a mass exodus in the state of Connecticut of law enforcement officers that are currently employed. And then the other flip side of that coin is that we're having a really hard time trying to get new candidates that can meet the high standard set to become police officers in Connecticut. So I just went through 271 applicants to get one when I had 2 seats in the academy open for us. So it's definitely a problem. So we got to forecast out about a year when you think you're going to need another officer. I know historically, many agencies wait until there's an opening available, but if the opening is available tomorrow, you're not getting an officer in the next 2 weeks. It's going to take a year from whatever that date is, or a year from when you're able to hire. With the police commission saying, hey, we want to increase the size of the department to keep a 4-person patrol on, and we have 4 patrol districts, and it fluctuates between 4 and 3. 3 is the number, 4 is with excess personnel, and the excess personnel is usually at overtime cost. It's very rare that there's 4 people working on any given schedule without somebody being in for overtime. Then projecting out, we said, well, they wanted me to try and increase the department by 2 in the next year, which would be in 2023. So one of the first things I did when I got into this role was, I know Deputy Chief Susi had already roughed out the budget request, and I told him to add 2 positions in the patrol division as I was directed by the police commission to do so, and also for that 1 extra dispatch position, which is why you're seeing that in the budget request there. Now, questions would definitely help here. If you ask me the questions, it's easier to answer.
I always thought we had 4, and maybe this is a question for Chris. I was always under the impression we had 4 patrol. Was that always this overtime cost, or did we drop due to attrition?
It's always been 3 for years and years.
It's 3.
Chris, you're on mute if you're trying to speak.
I wasn't, but by contract, our minimum staffing is 3 officers and a supervisor. But there's times when our shifts are above minimum staffing levels. There's 4, 5, 6 officers and a supervisor on at certain times, depending on the schedule.
Okay, but only 3 are on actual patrol around town.
No, there could be, if there's 6 working on a night, they could be 6 assigned to patrol with a supervisor or 2 supervisors. There could be 8 people assigned to the day shift, but by contract, it can't drop below 3 officers and a supervisor. That's where the 3 comes from.
Okay, so it is 4,
3 and a supervisor.
3 and a supervisor.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's my confusion, nobody else's. Okay, thank you.
You got it.
Questions? No other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
That's it? No other questions?
I guess not. We're good. Thank you very much.
Well,
Thanks, guys.
before I let you go, let me just add some food for thought, because I know you're looking for a strategic plan, and we actually are starting our strategic plan review. I have a staff meeting coming up on Thursday, and I don't want to get you involved in the operations of the police department, but just to clarify what Deputy Chief Susi just said about manpower, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that even though we have a supervisor out in the field and 3 officers is the minimum, we have been hiring for the 4th officer in particular to try and stem the flow of some of the thefts involving things like catalytic converters, car thefts, and all that stuff. So it's not often that you're going to see 6, 7, or 8 officers on a shift. I just want to be clear on this. Yeah, I would like to increase the minimum to 4. This way you always have a backup. One of the things I noticed since I got here is that our officers oftentimes don't have a backup officer, especially if you had a domestic on one side of town, that takes 2 officers. You have a larceny on Farmington Ave that somebody's selling, there's your 3rd officer. The only person left could be the supervisor, and then the supervisor might be backing up somebody. And if you had a motor vehicle stop on, this is what I noticed when I first came up. If you had a motor vehicle stop out on Route 71 down by the Timberland Golf Course area there, and then you had an incident occurring on the Berlin Turnpike, backup is going to be a problem to get across town in a rapid fashion, especially if everybody's tied up. And I have listened to the radio. Yes, I came from an agency that was much bigger, and I think our guys and girls do an excellent job taking care of each other out there. But that one person extra would make a difference, because I know Berlin's a fairly safe community, but crime in the country is rising. And we're not having a very successful chance of stemming it unless there's some other issues that get taken care of, like maybe, making sure that people that get caught by the police actually get prosecuted. But that's not something that we can control. What we need to do is say, hey, this town is fairly safe. We want to keep it safe. And we got to think about the fact that major crime in the country is on an upswing that's been unheard of for 25 years. So just keep that in your mind when you're thinking about, okay, what's the numbers? What's the bare minimum we can do in Berlin? Because that's what you're doing right now, is pretty much the bare minimum. And I just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Chief, I have a quick question, Tim Grady. This is related to the capital budget. I noticed on the capital budget, there's a request in for 3 patrol cars and 1 administrator's car. Now, last year, we approved 4 patrol vehicles, and Jimmy Simons was telling me that we only got 3 patrol vehicles, and 1 of them was an administrator's car. And now again, I see 3 patrol units, and this time it's written down as a separate administrator's car. Are we taking line patrol cars and giving these to administrators brand new versus rotating out older cruisers with 70, 80,000 miles on them and giving those to the administrators? Would that be better for the guys that are on the road?
So the police commission has the same concern that you have, and they brought it up at their special meeting a week and a half ago. They want the patrol cars to go out on patrol first. Right now, my car's got 78,000 miles on it. I can't speak to what happened before I took office as far as who got what cars. That decision was made before I came on board.
I understand that.
Yeah, so of course, in my discussions, both in the hiring process and with the police commission last week, when they were looking at the budget request and all, and they were saying, well, we need to get patrol cars out for patrol, and I wholeheartedly agreed with them. So as to who picks where the cars go, I can assure you that if we got 4 cars and there were patrol vehicles, they would be going to patrol. What I found out when I got on board was that the previous chief had ordered a Dodge Charger for the chief's car. That has since been canceled, and I directed Simons there to get another patrol vehicle in an email.
Okay, good. That's what I was looking for. Of course, you're not gonna get any cruisers anyways, before it's not making them, but that's.
No, that's another problem, yeah. So,
Yeah, they were looking at, I think, 18 months out. So,
yeah, nobody's getting cars. That's it's not just, it's all over. You just can't get any.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for the chief? Okay, thank you, chief.
Thanks, chief. Thanks,
Okay,
Chris.
stay warm.
All right, so moving on, we have a motion on F2.
Move to approve the new superintendent of facilities position, which will be shared between departments 38 town and 61 Board of Education.
Second. Second. Discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. How is this going to work?
Great question.
How is it going to work?
I mean, having 2 bosses is never a great idea.
Well, I want to clarify, well, it says town and board of ed, Department 38 and Department 31 are both in the general government budget. They're not actually in the
I
board
know
of
that.
Brian's budget. This is how we operate today. So all of facilities falls under general government, supporting the board of ed. And that presents its own set of challenges. If you think about the same person, Doug, like this be sitting here, has to manage facility issues that might come up in the police department, that might come up in any of our schools, that might come up in Sage Park, that might come up in town hall, library. Hence the need for someone else. He is the first, second, third call. If anybody has a facilities issue. Arosh is on. Let him speak to why we feel this is important. Not only to do it, but to do it.
Question answer. Who was the first answer? Having 2 bosses. Disparity is the board of ed expressed or the.
What is a very request? You know, if somebody says light bulb is out at Burnham High, and somebody else says my window just blew out a police department office, I would say the blown out window is going to get precedence and rise.
Isn't it time?
What's that?
Is that in time versus choose versus.
But isn't there a director of operations that's already working for the board of ed?
There is a director of operations.
Yeah, but it's not, the facilities and operations are the consideration. Pocono's not running around dealing with broken windows.
No, I'm just wondering how much of his job description should the board find so that he's not doing some of those things too, and it's being done by somebody lower, because there's people already below
Which is why I asked the question.
him. Yeah, well, I listened to the town council meeting and I read their packet, and there really was no kind of job description for Doug or for the new guy. So it's like, what are we voting on? We're just gonna hire a person.
Bringing the title.
To carry away.
Yeah, we're bringing them in blind and hoping everything falls in place. And that's not a good idea.
Roche, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so, I mean, don't know about the Board of Ed and their administrative structure. That's all interesting, but at the end of the day, there are 36 buildings and 1 million square feet that the current director of facilities has oversight over. And, I hope you had a chance to look at the background material. And I look back, and when you go back to 2014 or so, during the construction of the high school, for various reasons, people leaving and falling sick and, the positions were combined, the project construction manager and superintendent into one. And at that time, that position was reporting to Public Works Director. And in 2016, it was moved away. So it became one position with, the director, project manager, superintendent, all in one. And, when you look at the scope of the work and everything that happens in there, from the custodial work to all the trades, from, carpentry, though a new one that has come up is all the hardware that we have to manage with access control and surveillance equipment, audiovisual, plumbing, electrical, communications, HVAC, roofing, masonry, painting. And the way it is structured right now compared to like public works or public grounds, there is no superintendent and a foreman. There's a foreman and just Doug, who is the facilities director. He's really good, but there's only 24 hours during the day. And he is on all the time, 7 days a week. The reason why I'm bringing this to you now, and I went to the council, I'm really concerned about the human toll that it's taking on him. And Doug has actually offered to go reduce his hours significantly to fund this with the help of some of the other savings he's got, because it's unmanageable right now. I am really concerned about his health and personal well-being. It's gone on for too many years, and we are at a point that anything from a stain in the carpet to a leak in the roof to a ductwork project planning or a LED project, everything is managed by this one person. Ideally, you should have a superintendent who can manage the daily operations and a foreman who can manage the crew. And then Doug or the director's position is more strategic and more of the planning and project management and things like that. And it has all fallen on one person. So it's a lot for one person to do. And I ideally don't want to wait till July 1 because something's going to break. And that's why I'm bringing this forward, because I don't want any interruption in service or loss of personnel.
Just to clarify for me then, does this facilities superintendent and the director of facilities, are they co-equals, or does one answer to the other?
Superintendent will be answering to the director.
Thank you.
So, Roche, you're going to be shifting some of the director's responsibilities to the superintendent. Is that what you're doing? So you're going to change both job descriptions. It's the directors, and you're going to create a superintendent job description.
That is correct. Ideally, the superintendent would be the person managing the daily operations and the projects and day-to-day stuff. Not that the director won't, but right now there's too much on the director's plate that it's unmanageable. It's 7 days a week, pretty much, in terms of requests coming from all of the schools, from the principals. There is no real structure. Everything just goes straight into the director of facilities. And in terms of prioritizing and managing and assigning people and doing purchase orders and agenda items to it just the list goes on and on and on and on. And this is not a knock on the town's chart and how it's structured, but our administrative structure and the approval requirements and the limits, bid requirements, it also takes a lot more time to get something done. And we all have to go through that, planning process and submission to get to the final end result. So another set of hands would be really helpful.
Do we have somebody in mind for this position, or are you going outside?
No, we don't. We're going out. Someone internally could apply, but we really want to just try and get the best person for the job.
Do you anticipate having a job description done by the time you go out and get someone?
Actually, it's done now.
Oh.
would like to post it as soon as you approve it. If you approve it, to be so kind enough to do it.
Kevin, it says here funding is available through savings. What is it?
There are various accounts within both departments, 30 and 61, that we anticipate savings. We didn't specifically identify savings amount because we don't actually know what the cost would be this fiscal year. It's contingent upon when we actually hire somebody and they actually come in and start. So at that point, we would have to come back to you and identify each state the transfers we would like to make from potentially various lines.
And is there a standard range of salary you're looking for this position? You know, I mean, what are we approving? 200,000 position?
It's a,
I'm just asking, is there a range?
I mean, that's kind of important.
No,
it's
it-
about can I jump in, please?
Oh, yeah.
They're thinking about a maximum of $90,000 salary. And that's consistent with the other superintendents in highway and in public grounds. In that range.
Any other questions?
Chairman, or just, Doug Siller. Just to summarize what Arosha said, Kevin, this position morphed into what it did over the years. By default, I happen to be the person in that position, so through the high school project, the NAFTA project, the position to empower the middle managers union, reporting to the public works director, and the manager director position. We worked with the board of ed over the past few years to talk about restructuring two unions to share services. We didn't operate the schools with maintenance requests. The lead custodian was since hired. The business office was separated into finance and operations. On the town side, based on the charter with Department 61, the unions of blue collar and board school custodians, all the maintenance and the operation. The operations went to the board of ed, but as far as the maintenance of schools, refers back to the town facilities department. Therefore, only blue collar staff and the supervisors that manage them are able to schedule, coordinate, approve purchases for materials, contractual services, anything related to on and around schools for the building maintenance aspect of the utilities, et cetera. So 7 years later, we're looking to bring our department up to the supervisor level to help be more efficient. The foreman will work with the crew in the same structure that public grounds, highway department, water department, town garage, municipal garage. Everyone has that structure of a top manager director, and under them is the department superintendent, the foreman, and their administrative assistant, and the crew chief at the blue collar level. So being the third or fourth largest department financially, we got board of ed, public works, police, and then facilities all in that group. So it just feels right to have for the efficiency and effectiveness, that administrative role for the daily operations of the workload based on the schools and accountabilities. The facilities director, not a name of position, would work more upper level with the boards and commissions for capital projects, capital planning, RFPs, RFQs, get the projects in the queue before they're then coordinated with town staff, meet the contractors, provide access before the projects are approved. So it's a working position. Certainly, it's not that's not going to take work away from blue collar, but it's an administrative supervisor role to be the first point of contact, phone calls, emails, text messages from town staff, from the public, from the Board of Education. Each school has a lead custodian. We have a work order system software that work orders are created. If a teacher, a student, administrator sees an issue within the school related to building maintenance, work order is created, it comes to us, we assign it to the appropriate staff and manage it daily on where that work order, why, when is it going to be completed, to get materials, can we schedule access, it's all done through the town facilities department. So this position will be very beneficial. It's a lot to put on one person. We think there's going to be some efficiencies increased by having this position and put it in line with the structure of the other town departments. Be very beneficial. It's taken this long based on, conversations that we worked out and worked through with the Board of Ed over the years on how we can best share services. And a lot of that now is financially we share between our department, Department 61. And a lot of the work is coordinated with the business office now at the Board of Education for capital project planning. The needs of each school then comes back to the facilities department. How do we move forward with purchasing RFQs who's gonna do it, but everything comes back to the facilities department in Department 61. Because we ultimately have to pay for it out of that particular budget for the school, so.
When it comes to the Board of Education, the operations position, that person never runs a capital project or anything like that. I mean, I'm just, because, you know, that used to be a business manager position, and they broke it up into a finance and a operation. In my world, operations include facilities and maintenance and all that stuff, you know, but I understand. What is his role besides, it says custodial operations, what is it?
He's in charge of all the custodians.
That's it?
Custodians are not part of facilities.
Correct. So that, yeah, they're responsible for technology. The school has, the Board of Ed has like 5 or 6 IT technicians now.
Okay.
Also, business operations does school security department, transportation, custodial technology. So as with our department, the school department is also increased based on technology, the needs and expectations within the schools. There's been a need for that position to split into 2 financially and operations, similar to what we're asking for, but more operational support.
We just ask you your own personal opinion as far as, because it's always worked this way. Facilities is facilities, custodial is custodial, and there's sometimes a fine line between something that needs to get fixed right now that would be done by facilities, and then I hear, well, the custodian does it, and then there's a rub going the wrong way with facilities. Tell me about what you think in that regard.
That's something we worked through over the years. Several meetings, working with the unions, trying to figure out what's best, who can be the first responder, who can actually do the work. We've looked into bringing the school custodians onto the town side from the blue collar. There'd be some cost up front, a one-time cost impact, but then we would have another 20 to 30 people within the blue collar town union that now we don't run into those issues. In the meantime, we found a way to share that work with respect to the union contracts and agreements. But either way we go, it's going to require more supervision. We bring 20 or 30 custodians into the town department, then we would need that supervision for them to schedule and cover and assign work. Staying on the board side now, which is what the board did, is they have an operations manager and then a lead head custodian in each building to oversee the custodial work. In coordinating conversation, we've kind of separated who's responsible for what. If you're going to hang a paper towel dispenser, if you're going to mop the floor, if you're going to hang a TV. Everyone knows the expectations of who's responsible to do that work.
So the rub that I'm hearing about, it's more union to union grievance kind of thing, or?
Yeah, a little misunderstanding, there's like, if you have 20 to 50 people, half of the people may be a little more willing to learn and try new things, where the other half know their roles and expectations. So just constantly managing the differences of opinion based on the workload and the expectations. If their supervisor, a principal, or a teacher comes up to custodian and says, hey, I need you to mount this on the wall for me, I got to teach class right now. Some custodians would be willing to do that. And some may say, well, you know what, that's really not my job. I'll call and contact the right person to do that. So there's been a little disagreement with that. But we're working through it, and it's gotten much better. That's really good. So.
Thank you.
How many people work for facilities?
Our department is 17, including myself, 5 custodians, 9 tradespeople, 4 men and administrative assistant.
And those 9 custodians are just for buildings outside of the school department.
Correct. The 5 custodians are town custodians working in all the town buildings, town hall, community center, library, senior center, physical services complex. They take care of just the 3 pool buildings each part. Seasonal rotation based on the programs. And then the 9 trades guys work out of our department, which take care of the 36 buildings for anything mechanical, electrical, plumbing, roofing, siding, masonry, technology, and we coordinate with the contractors, any services that we can't do in house.
So right now, who directs the custodians at the schools to perform work? Facilities
The Board of Education.
or the Board of Education?
It's Jeff Cook.
Yeah.
Jeff Coven was the
Okay.
supervisor of that.
So in fact, he does have some contact with the actual facilities maintenance and everything.
Yeah, the custodians report there.
Yeah.
The head custodians.
Head custodians call us direct, or if it's a custodial issue, they contact Jeff. If it's a building related issue, they contact us.
Well, that doesn't sound very efficient at all, does
It is if you know which category. it falls in.
it? Yeah, exactly.
And then certainly in fairness to the way it's structured, that you know, Jeff can take a phone call, but that's just the messenger of, because it's not the Board of Ed staff that would do the repair work, nor would it come out of the Board of Education budget. Therefore, it defaults back to Department 61. So
I think it is, in one respect, it's not efficient in terms of buildings and functions. But in terms of the actual function someone does, it is efficient, because if you need an electrician, Doug is managing what's the highest priority, what's the best use of that person's time. So if you were the principal of a school, you may not always be happy with the prioritization, because you think yours may be the number one priority. And that could be the town manager, could be anybody, just an example. However, it allows Doug to determine what is the critical priority. It may be that somebody is pulled onto a critical job because electrical work needs to be done, so a boiler will kick back on at a particular building without realizing that, you know, if some other minor thing needs to be done, or an improvement or modification versus a fix.
we're a little unique in Berlin. We're one of the few towns that has the structure the way we do. The majority of the towns, their Board of Education maintenance is full circle maintenance. They shovel and plow snow, they salt, they take care of the buildings, and they work for the Board of Education on their budget. There's, I guess you can argue some savings and efficiencies the way we continue to do it. Just we need to staff the project. You know, looking at it, when the previous superintendent brought up, you know, his request ideally from where he previously came from, that he advocated for that. He wanted the Board of Education to have their own maintenance department. But the impact of that would be like a fire service, millions of dollars, vehicles, buildings, tools, staff.
Duplication of services.
Duplication of services, you know, you're dividing the tax dollars, just shifting it. Now we're saying, this is a great structure, we can make it work, we can make it successful and build on it. We just need the staff to do it. And the incremental cost compared to the whole department. We can keep doing it.
Great. Well, thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Consideration.
Let's make a-
With Kevin and Roche for, you know, helping the financials put together.
let's
We
do
we
a
hope
vote.
you support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number three, move to approve transfers of $26,120 from electricity to electricity lighting control upgrades, both in the schools, department general fund budget, to pay for debt service payments related to VHS lighting upgrade project.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Move to appropriate $539 from the sale of land, labor and materials revenue account to the contractual services and projects account in the capital management.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Move to appropriate $6,029.30 from the sale of land, labor and materials revenue account to the contractual services and projects account in the capital management.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Get a chance to get that playground over.
Go out there, right?
Field trip. No, we were just talking about it in the Capitol meeting and they had $200,000 and such. No, we can go over and patch that up. So, okay, so it's 200,000.
I think we had a little confusion the way it was presented, playground equipment versus resurfacing the basketball area.
Yeah,
I think we worked through that.
okay, good. I like that.
Kevin?
Then we can work on the generator indeed.
Before I jump in, I just want to let you know that, thank you for clearing off my desk. You guys have the ACFR for June 30, 2021, as well as the state single audit. Typically, you would have state and federal single audit, but there has been a permitted delay until September of 2022 by the U.S. Treasury as they work through coronavirus, ARPA, and all the other things, how they want it done, the federal single audit. So I'm not seeing that this year. There is the letter from the auditors as to their responsibility and explain how great we were during the audit. So that's good. You do have the recommendations that the auditors provided for improvements. It's a clean opinion, so there were no recommendations based on critical matters that would potentially adjust the financials, but recommendations nonetheless. as well as kind of the outline. Just as a heads up, as a follow-up to my email, Thursday, 2:30, there'll be a Zoom meeting. For anybody who'd like to attend, will be recorded. For anybody who has sleeping problems, to go over with the auditors. So they will.
That's what Urban is for.
Yeah, it may be the least watched thing on YouTube ever, but anybody who wants to participate, you're certainly more than welcome to participate and hear what the auditors have to say. Overall, I would say our financials are in a strong position. I would draw your attention as you go through, and I will do the same with the Board of Ed, especially as they go through some union audits. Our unassigned fund balance is over $18 million. However, I would draw your attention to the last
I thought you said
footnote,
it was 13.
the last footnote,
Okay.
which is a subsequent event footnote that highlights the $5.3 million of that was assigned in this fiscal year, so that somebody reading it doesn't think we're sitting on that.
Okay, thank you.
So just to draw your attention on that. Two other things before I get into the numbers quickly. One, the audit RFP has been on the street since before Christmas. It is due to be open. The bid opening is next Thursday, the 20th at 2 p.m. So by the next meeting, I hope to have a recommendation for you as far as we did have one audit firm ask a question. Nobody else has asked questions, which is not really that surprising because those you expect and want to respond, they've audited municipalities. We're not different than other places, so I don't imagine there's a lot of questions. They put the response together and really evaluate. And then lastly, we did receive an email just today on an update I had shared with you about the audit. OPM has hired Cone Resnick to do a comprehensive audit of the coronavirus relief funds on behalf of OPM due to essentially what happened in West Haven. The latest update is they're working with Cone Resnick on updating the COVID portal. OPM has a COVID reporting portal that was being used to meet their reporting requirements. Their targeted date for reporting submission is tentatively February 15th. That says to me they're probably going to start with more or less a desk audit, no surprise there, and then if needed, hit the field somewhere where they find issues. Again, I don't expect any issues, but we will comply with whatever requests they have. We did get a second request from reporters, from another reporter today. It's been almost a month since the first one had a request, and I've seen nothing, which was kind of what I expected. Is usually they ask you questions, and when there's nothing there, you never see it in the paper, which is kind of a good thing. You don't want to see it in the paper for this. So, and then lastly, for that is you do have the response from the Board of Ed. Raul requested that the detail I provided, the Board of Ed provided. So that was provided by the board. I printed it out, and you have that in your pile. So quite a few things tonight.
Can I just ask you on the Board of Ed response? The first couple of pages there, that is the same level of detail that you submitted to OPM originally, right?
Right. The OPM had two submission requirements. The first one was very detailed. Invoice numbers, what did you use it for? The second one was much higher level, and that's what's really the second one is what's prompting a lot of the issues. When the first one we had to submit, and then we were reimbursed based on our submission. The Board of Ed had to do that each step. The State Department of Education was, they took the approach of tell us what you're going to spend it on, we will approve it, and then we will give you the money, and then we expect you to spend it that way, and we reserve the right to audit that you did. OPM, in an effort to get money out to municipalities who were struggling with the second tranche of coronavirus relief, sent the money out population-based. They basically said the total amount we received population-based minus what you received in the first, we're going to give that to you. And then later on, you'll have to report back. Now the people are reporting back, they're getting the issues. So the Board of Ed has a great deal of detail, in part because they had to provide a great deal of detail. And you can see actually included the grant award notifications after each one of these as well. So State Department of Education definitely took a pretty thorough approach.
All right, well, we just start this afternoon. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask and go through our rule.
I just have one question. There's something on one of the pages here. I would say Zoom purchases. The Inside public sector, public something. There's a SO1 backup. I guess that was all for Zoom. Okay, well, if that was the vendor for Zoom, I didn't see that. This description. With the original. Probably about 4 in, 4/3. I guess that vendor was on.
It's exhibit B, right? At the
Yeah.
top left.
Yeah, okay, you can scratch that.
Quickly on the numbers, just quickly hit on revenue budget remains, revenue to budget for taxes remains solid. Overall revenue continues to remain solid. I have since moved the 700,000 from, now that the audit's complete, PCAP is reviewed and attested to our lost revenue number. I've moved 700,000 into the general fund. Once we have the final invoices, we're done with the jacketing, but once we have the final invoices, the project's closed, I anticipate moving that over there and we'll know the definitive number. We will be less than 1.2 million, just because we know the bids came in higher. Despite our best efforts to bring it down, still came in a little bit high. So we should have a pretty solid number shortly in that. Tax collections remain strong. We actually collected fairly early in December. I was kind of surprised that people who were paying early, but not a bad sign. Storm related overtime, we still have a decent budget of almost 118,000 left. We've been hit with only a couple of storms this year. Unfortunately, the timing of those storms has been about as bad as it could be. Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. We had some stuff around New Year's, and obviously we had some.
Is that double or higher, 1.5?
I believe it's, yeah, I think it's.
That's a lot.
For the holiday. So hopefully we will see things mild out. It's been cold, but dry, saves on that money. We'll see where that goes. Will draw your attention on the pension fund. We had 2 inactives coming in this month, this past month. One of those 2 inactives who was somebody who was vested, so they worked more than 2 years, but they're not actively employed. One of those elected to take his money out, so we're down to 1 inactive, but rolled it into a 457 plan, but took the money out of our plan. We've been actively trying to get those folks to take their money and roll. The reality is this person rolled it into a state 457 plan. So this is going to work for the state of Connecticut. The logic behind rolling it, and the reason we're pushing so hard is they have a lot more investment options. And they're basically getting a fixed return is what they're getting off of just keeping it in the pension fund all these years. So it's advantageous for them to decide how to market tanks, and they put it in the market. That's not great. But that's more of their choice rather than a very modest 2% or less. But that continues. Our liability came down a little bit more with that, about $178,000 liability came off the books. And then classroom storage cubbies at Hubbard is the last one on the 2% fund. Some of them are in the works, ordering the lighting, doing the lighting upgrades. So we're far along in that one, as well as the rooftop units from McGee, ordering those units to have to install next summer. The bid results are now in the classroom items. So all the 2% fund items are at least actively engaged, if not all the way through on some that you'll see us complete.
So those will get done next summer.
Yeah, just a quick update on that. The last fall, the rooftops additional funding. So those were ordered. We were notified last fall. Tentative arrival February, March of 22. The bids for the Hubbard cubbies, those are actually being opened up this Thursday. So that money's there. So we engaged contract and then schedule that once everything's fabricated and scheduled. Hopefully April break. That's our goal is to schedule during that week of April, spring recess of the school. There's one more in there.
The lighting upgrades.
Lighting up their punch list items this week, next week. They had been waiting for a few parts and pieces, but
You guys are gonna be able to do some of the actual work on the AC units for the room.
for McGee.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're brand new replacing it. Direct replacement units to existing.
It'll be partnering between local staff and some of the surplus money you put last year to allow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You guys are gonna be
Yeah,
able to.
sorry,
It's gonna be a partnership.
Yeah, well, that's gonna save us some money right
Yeah,
there.
we'll kind of contract with the crane electrician, HVAC contractor.
Yep.
We're contractors and our staff. So
That's a good thing.
Yeah. No, it's one of the advantages of having facilities like that across the.
So Kevin, the DNA, as bring this up, the revenue again is not so good. Okay. So this consulting firm came in and did a report. From what I read about it, I mean, it's more of some operational efficiency, but nothing.
I told you there was no silver bullet.
That was
Nothing
an
there.
understatement.
There's nothing there that tells me anything's gonna help me, okay? I mean, there's some minor efficiencies, efficiencies. But I guess my question is, we're gonna have a group meeting between town council, us, and this consulting firm, is that what we?
The intent is to have the Zoom call. I know, Roche, you're still on. As far as VNA with the consultants, the intent is to have a Zoom call combined, so you could ask questions directly of them and hear their report. I think, one of the things was, we just had the joint meeting Thursday. There's actually a meeting between the Golf Commission and the town council and a potential outsourced vendor this Thursday. So when Oshai spoke, part of it was also to get a 3-week where there was actually an opportunity to have one and have the meeting in a reasonable time period. So I don't know if you want to elaborate, Roche.
I mean, yes, I mean, it's good to hear the consultants' recommendations, but I think after that, you probably want to hear from us what we are doing with those recommendations. I am very much encouraged by the new director, Barbara, who has taken a different approach to introducing some efficiencies, some technologies, and also at the same time reaching out. We just signed another deal with Brookdale. It's in West Hartford that we will get access to treat their patients. And it's been a challenge because of COVID. But as I mentioned, we were in the $900,000 range that I've told Barbara we should be able to get it close to a 700 and a 500 in the next couple of years, not that far out. I don't see a way. The consultant says if you implement all the efficiencies, you could have a break-even operation. I don't see the pathway right now, but I don't want to promise something that we can deliver. But there is, what's nice about that is when you look at their productivity measures for the nurses and the home health aides, and there is room for improvement. And which means with the same staffing level, we can get the census numbers up to 80, if not 100. Again, census is not, it's an indication. A higher census is higher revenue, but it's not, all census are not created equally. Some of the other things that they're working on, some of the advice they gave, and Barbara was on it before, that we have not been very good in, ending the treatment. As longer you keep these patients, the reimbursement rates go down. And those are some of the things. VNA not supposed to be something where you go and take a patient and treat them for years. You have to transition them into a self-care and move on. So let's hear the consultant, but then after that, I think you want to hear from Barbara, especially, and myself, about how we plan to implement some of these changes and where that might take us. And I'm fairly optimistic that we can turn it around and get into favorable, reducing the deficit, let's say, for right now.
How does the actions you're taking now differ from 4 years ago when we brought this problem up the first time? And the existing new director then asked for time to relook at things. We did provide her with the ability to take a look at what they were doing and make changes as she saw fit. What do you see different from 4 years ago? Because obviously she had 4 years to work at it, and we're no better off now than we were then.
Yeah, I was not here 4 years ago. I don't know what changes she made, but her just looking at what the consultant report said, at least it didn't appear to me that we were functioning effectively, very efficiently based on the consultant's report. So I don't know what changes are made by the previous director.
I understand you may not have been here for it, but I mean,
Yeah.
we've been hearing the same thing forever. We've heard that the nurses are at 90% capacity or 100% capacity. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how the new director can do something more, or whether they can.
I don't even think a goal of $500,000 to $700,000 loss is anything to be glad about. I mean, this is a service provided by many, many places that do it profitably, and they do it every day. And the town of Berlin just can't do it profitably. We have to reach a point where we say, this is it, it's enough is enough. I'm not okay with $500,000 loss versus 900,000. And when I know that there's companies out there providing the exact same service and turning a profit, so it's just not practical. If we turn the switch off tomorrow, nobody's service would go away. It's not like we're providing a service that is exclusive or different than anything else anybody else is providing. We're competing with private organizations that have way more staff, way more capacity, and way more experience at this, and we're just losing. It's just that simple.
Hartford Healthcare has bought them all up. They're buying everything.
So
So
you can't compete with Hartford Healthcare.
Roche, you can understand why we're a little pessimistic because we haven't seen the results, the last several years. And to me, if your person's gonna come and pitch to us, I mean, there's gotta be where they got precise information with respect to how they're gonna increase the census, where they're gonna get that, and then are they gonna do it this month, next month, because we're not comfortable going another $900,000 million next year. We're at a point right now where we're saying it's not working and we don't have a solution. This operational thing that this tree did, it was good. It was good. It helps a little, but it's not going to make any impact to that bottom line. So, I mean, you really have to have a convincing, position for us to really be convinced that this is really going to change.
Yeah, I would like to see like a comprehensive, strategic, like this is what we're going to do to increase the census. Just saying because we're going to increase them from 8 to 100, honestly doesn't mean anything. We've been saying it for years. It has to be like a comprehensive, this is the plan, this is how we're going to do it. These are the steps to do it. Like, that's the only.
The other side of that, though, is increasing the census isn't the only thing. Roche mentioned it.
That
It's,
hasn't been
it's,
gaining
it- it's the type of pay that you're getting while you're increasing the census. All right. I mean, if we're increasing the census on Medicare that is only paying 50% of what it costs to do the service, we might as well not do it.
My first budget meeting here was about the VNA, and they had increased the census and lost $200,000 more than the year before. So
Yeah, it's,
from
there's a
day
few
one, I
things
went,
that
this
have
is
to
not
be-
good. This is not good.
Okay. Well, I prefer the meeting with your director before the joint meeting, to be honest with you, because we need to really understand where they're coming from. We
Should we have the top train as well? Should we have the top train beginning as well?
I don't think he needs to be there for that.
Not for that.
That's gonna be a whole
Next step.
separate mess.
I think that we should make a priority of meeting with the director, being
We're ultimately gonna have to win the charge.
yeah, there's no question. How about next month's meeting?
We gotta do this.
Can you invite her to the time?
Yeah. let's do
Would
that.
you like her in place of the public works director or in addition to it? Your meeting, so what you think would be most helpful in terms of budget?
Public Works.
Public Works was coming in to talk, he's doing streetscape analysis, talking about a lot of the capital needs. I mean, you can have both. Mike's prepared to come in already, so.
I don't see why we can't have both. Okay, it's budget season, when I talk to these people. Last night, the Board of Education finished at 10:30.
There was
And
there
they
was a
restart
break, there was a
tomorrow.
break,
It was
Oh,
almost,
I heard all about it.
it
because
was
I was,
almost 2 hours to decide to table something that you could have figured out had to be tabled in 5
I was at the
minutes.
basketball game with the athletic director, and he was updating me on that. So,
That's not much.
Okay.
The first.
All right,
motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roche, thanks for coming by. Nice to see you.
Always a pleasure. Pleasure is doubly mine.
Thanks, Roche. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.